Welcome back to the Bible in History. I'm Jeff Johnson, and with me today, of course, is my mother, Rebecca Johnson. And today we're going to be talking about Abraham. So we've been talking about all the different civilizations as they've been popping up, and so now we're circling back to Abraham. So I'm going to begin reading Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord had said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. Very fun stuff we're getting into.
I love that we're only in Genesis chapter 12 and already we have the whole earth filled.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay. Little sidebar here. As we tell you these dates, please understand that we base our dates on the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
We've discussed this before. We will continue to base them on the Bible. If you do not believe in the Bible, your dates are going to be very skewed, and we do not believe in evolution. So obviously, we're not going to have evolutionary dating.
Right.
So, Abraham was born in 2058 BC in the Ur of the Chaldees, which was a city in Mesopotamia. We've already talked about Mesopotamia. Ur was a very important city-state of Mesopotamia located near modern Tel El Mukhayar in Iraq. Again, my apologies to all of you who speak Arabic correctly. But anyway, Tel El Mukhayar in Iraq. During Abraham's life, the Ur of the Chaldees was a coastal city on the Persian Gulf. We discussed this when we talked about the fact that the Tower of Babel couldn't be one of the places that they give. It couldn't be there because there was water.
Yep.
So he was actually in a seaport town at the time. Now, today, it is nowhere near the sea. It has receded. So, but at the time, it was a seaport town. It is home to a ziggurat that is very often confused with the Tower of Babel.
Yes, it is.
It was celebrating, it was built for the moon god. Oh, we know about the moon god. There's semi-dummies again. The moon god, Nana. Maybe that's why I don't want to be called Nana as a grandma, huh? Which
Such a random.
Scholars have confused for the Tower of Babel. Nana literally means the abode of Nana. Wow, that's not hard. The city, I'm sorry, Ur of the Chaldees means the abode of Nana. My bad there. So they began worshiping the moon at the Tower of Babel. This comes with them to this ziggurat. We happen to know this isn't the Tower of Babel because it was built in the reign of Ur-Nammu. And then it was reconstructed in the 6th century BC by Nabonidus. So, at this particular ziggurat, they worship bulls, which is something that we find in the Minoan culture. Yep. It is also something we find very much in the Egyptian culture.
Very common.
That, in fact, is a huge thing in the Egyptian culture that helped David Roll, the archaeologist, figure the correct timeline. So the worship of bulls actually ends up being very useful to us in finding timelines.
Yes.
But, so, this is the culture that Abraham is leaving. Actively worshiping the moon, using the worship of animals such as bulls, and so very much tied into what they learned at the Tower of Babel. And we discover that God says, get out of there. Now, you know that personally I feel like probably the Indus River Valley civilization, the Harappan society, would have been where truth that they learned from Noah had gone. And we also know there were massive trade routes. So who's to say there weren't missionaries? We always claim that Paul was the first missionary, but I think there were far more missionaries before Paul ever came around. We just happen to know about him.
Mm-hmm.
So, Abram knows about God. Abram follows God. And we know that at some point, God tells Abram to leave the Ur of the Chaldees and go to a land that he does not know.
Yep.
So he obeys. The first stage of his journey, though, he kind of goes off course a little. His brother dies.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently unexpectedly. he heads to his land of Haran, and he takes in Lot, his nephew.
Right.
So that's kind of a sidebar to all that is going to happen in Abraham's life, although that one decision is going to come back up. Lot and his family are going to be kind of a thorn in the flesh of Abraham as he travels.
Yes,
So
he is.
not what God was looking for, but we do know that finally he leaves Haran and goes to Canaan.
Yep.
So,
Verse 5 of chapter 12, we see this. So it says here, "And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they came."
okay. Canaan. Obviously, where Abraham goes is modern day Israel. We've
Right.
got that. I think most people can understand that. Saved or not, you kind of get Abraham connected with Israel and the whole Middle East. Interesting though, Canaan. Canaan is mentioned, or Canaanites, Canaan and Canaanites, 160 times in the Hebrew Bible.
Very common.
Mostly in the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books, also in Joshua and Judges. Canaan is one of Noah's grandsons. And I want to talk about something really important here about Canaan and about some issues that we're facing in modern day society. So Jeff's going to read from Genesis 9 about this.
Right. Genesis 9, verses 25 through 27. "And he said," talking about Noah, "and he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant."
Okay. There's a thing of confusion. We've already discussed this before, and I want to reiterate it again.
Yes.
Because even among Christian society, we have a bad view. There's one blood, human blood, okay?
Yep.
And thanks to Darwin's theory of evolution, and let me emphasize that again, it was Darwin's theory of evolution that put black people as lesser than white people. So all the people out there, all these woke people, actually are diehard racists because they believe in Darwin's theory of evolution. Anyone who believes in evolution ipso facto believes that black people are less cultured and less advanced than white people. That's part of the theory of evolution, and it's anti-biblical. And the argument has been made in religious circles that they were cursed, therefore they are lesser people. Except it wasn't black people. It was the Canaanites. It's very, very clear here. Cursed be Canaan. And I think it's very interesting here. Canaanites, and I love this, and I can say this wholeheartedly because I am German, and my husband is more German than I am. Canaanites were called Aryans. What did Hitler call the Nazi race? The Aryan Society. Canaanites were called Aryans throughout history, ancient history. They were described as having lighter olive skin tone. They were not black at all. So, what's more interesting is that Canaanites are gone. We don't find Philistines. Nobody can trace back to a Philistine today. That whole culture group, and it was a culture group, that whole line right there was wiped out in Bible times, okay? They don't exist anymore. So God did fulfill his promise. They are gone. Note, they were not black, okay? So be very careful with this. Do not justify your sin because you think there was a curse so you can do this. It's okay. It isn't okay. We are one race, the human race. We are one blood, human blood. We are not animals, and God died for us on the cross. All of us, and none of us are more important, and none of us are less important. We all have value in God's eyes, and we're all children of God.
Yes.
So,
And I think it's important, going off just on a quick tangent, kind of along these lines. I think it's important for us to really take the time and study out everything
yes.
that we believe. And I don't care what it is you believe. If you believe in the gap theory, study it out, because it's wrong. And if you do the study, you'll find out why it's wrong. And with so many of these doctrines or concepts of history or whatever, you study it out with the Bible as our foundation. You study it in the Bible first, and you go through and you figure out why you believe what you believe. And a lot of times, if you study the Bible out, you will find that if you believe something wrong, you'll find out why it's wrong, and you can correct that belief. With this particular one, Canaan was cursed. And if you study out the history of the Canaanites throughout the Bible, you'll figure out that it wasn't, the blacks. It was the Canaanites, a small group. It wasn't the African country, or not country, continent. And so there's a lot of things that Satan will use. He'll take just a little tidbit, a little quick statement.
Exactly.
Just that one little kernel of truth, and twist it and corrupt it. And we don't bother to take the time to look into it and to actually figure out what's going on. And there's been so many different things, and just pretty much every kind of doctrine or history, Satan's corrupted in some way, because he takes that one little sentence
and twists it up. Yeah.
Way out of context, way out of everything. Get into the Word, figure it out. Otherwise, you're going to be way screwed up on your doctrine.
Yes, absolutely. I love the fact that there is more confirmation of the biblical fact. Remember, God said, Canaan shall be his servant. And he referred to both Shem and Japheth.
And Japheth.
Both.
Yes.
So I do find it very interesting that this is also further backed up by outside sources. Obviously, we don't need anything more than the Bible. But we do have friends, we have family members who are not Christians who will demand more proof. And there is. The Canaanites are mentioned in Egyptian and Babylonian writing. They did become servants to different nations. They were under Egyptian control. They were under Babylonian control after that. The Canaanite people traded in purple dye found in mussels along the coast, a very stinky and expensive process. But it was very profitable. That is why purple was restricted to the royalty, because the process is so incredibly difficult and you need so many mussels and boiled up, and it's really a stinky process to get it done. Interesting, Canaanites worshipped Baal. Baal is a form of part of the reincarnation, let's say, of the pagan trinity from the Tower of Babel, Semiramis, Nimrod, and Tammuz. Well, that goes into this pagan culture, and we have Baal being Nimrod or Satan. Same religion as the Tower of Babel. It included temple prostitutes. This is something we're going to find across the land of Canaan quite heavily, is temple prostitutes and child sacrifice. So the Canaanites are going to negatively influence the Israelites once they get there later, and we're going to see that. So the Canaanites were a very negative influence in the area. Very pagan, very demonic system of worship.
Oh, yeah.
And, I just want to, this is a side note that it just comes up in my mind here. We can criticize the Canaanites and these ancient groups for their practice of child sacrifice and live fires, for temple prostitutes literally having acts done in public on the temple stairs, part of the worship. And yet today we do the same thing in our own churches, Baptist, independent Baptist churches. We just cover it up and we call it pornography and abortion. We are sacrificing our babies today. Maybe we don't give birth and throw them in a fire pit. Instead, we have them injected with fire and rip them apart. And, pornography is becoming rampant among men and women in today's society. So we haven't really come too far from the Canaanite and the pagan philosophies of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, no. All that's really changed is the fact that we don't do it for, quote, worship.
Right. It's not so public.
Yeah, we keep it hidden on our computers and in our secret rooms or whatever, and we keep it, quote unquote, hush hush. Mm-hmm. It's not really. But yeah, the only difference is that it's non-religious. Right. And even back then, it was, quote, religious, but it was the same stuff for the same reasons.
Yeah.
And it was still sin. It still is sin. Mm-hmm. It's always been sin. And it's bad for you.
Yes. And honestly, I'm just going to put right here, if you're struggling with pornography, there is help out there. You can get help for that. There's some great programs. Slaying the Dragon is a program you can get online. Get help. If you've ever had an abortion, there are groups that will help you with that, help you deal with the pain of the realization of what you've done, and can get you through that. And God can forgive you for all of it. And you can have a life free from the guilt and the shame and the pain of these tragic sins that are hidden in the lives of many, 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 many Christians today. So you're not condemned. It can be fixed, and you can be saved and brought out of this addiction or forgiven for the mistake you've made through an abortion. And we have dear, dear friends who have gone through both issues and have found freedom in Jesus Christ. So do get help. And unfortunately, the Canaanites didn't want the help. It's not that God didn't give them a chance. It's not that God just said, oh, well, you're all going to die, and I don't care. But over and over, we'll see in the future, as we talk about Israel, they're going to reject that help. That is just not what they were interested in. They liked their Satan worship. So.
Yeah, and God says, through any temptations or trials, God provides a way out. And it's true. And there is always a way out. Maybe not on your own. Right. You will need help. But there is a way out. And God is merciful and forgiving, and He'll help you.
Yes. And
He's a very loving God.
And I think it's fascinating and really telling of God that He would send Abraham exactly to the area of the one cursed family, giving them the chance, being the example they needed to see. God didn't leave them abandoned. He sent them Abraham. He sent them the answer. Now, we don't know. Truthfully, there probably were Canaanites that rejected the Canaanite religion and followed the true God because of Abraham and the Israelites. There would have been some that came to the knowledge of Christ. So even in this family that had this curse placed upon them because of the sin, a sexual sin that happened between Canaan and Noah, even with that, God sent His promised people to this area. He sent Abraham right away. This isn't very long after the Tower of Babel. And so He has sent them very quickly an answer. And so there is always freedom in the Lord. And I think that's probably the most interesting and fun thought about Abraham and where God sent. God could have sent him anywhere. You understand that? Literally anywhere in the world. And yet He chose to send Abraham as a light to one of the darkest people groups that were deeply entrenched in this sin. They had been cursed. It was a family demon, and God said, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm sending you Abraham. So that just shows how much freedom you can have in Christ. if you have struggled with
Okay.
any of this, please, please, please reach out. There are people who can help you. There are groups that can help you with all of this, and you can find freedom. And God has provided the way. So next
Yeah.
time we will talk more about
I think
Abraham.
Yep, we'll continue on. We got sidetracked, but I think they're good sidetracks for us to go on.
Absolutely.
And, so do remember that God's always there for us, and if you are having problems, do ask for help. Ask your pastor, find some groups. There's a lot of
Right.
different places to go.
And if they need to reach out, we'll help
God's
them too.
there.
So
Yep. You can email us at thebibleinhistory@gmail.com. We'd love to answer any questions there, or if you have any questions about the history of all of this, of course, you can comment in the YouTube section as well. We'd love to help learn or teach and help you all learn. We'll love to see you next week as we continue talking about Abraham. See you next week.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to our channel.
You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and Google Podcasts.